You're listening to audio from the Decidedly podcast. For more information, find us on Instagram at Decidedly Podcast.
So why do you think Dallas smells so bad?
What?
It doesn't smell good.
It doesn't smell bad. What are you talking about?
You think it smells good there?
That's not what I said.
That's what I'm saying. It smells bad there.
No, it doesn't.
It smells like materialism.
Where are you going in Dallas? By the way, what does that smell like? What are you talking about?
I don't know. I just wanted to insult Dallas. Really,
you're just looking for every opportunity.
Yeah.
To
nothing against the people I know and love that live there.
My favorite people live in Dallas.
I just wish they would move.
I
just wish they'd come over here.
Think they're there for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
I like the friendly rivalry we have. It's kind of like, I can make fun of my sister. But if anyone ever makes fun of my sister, I'm going to fight them.
Okay. So you can make fun of Dallas, but people from Kansas City can't. Is that
no? Get out of here. Kansas City's way worse than Dallas.
You're just gonna disrespect all the city. You're gonna go through and just hit them one by one. And
there's some that are probably good. Like Boston's cool.
Okay.
I got nothing bad to say about Boston.
Okay. All right.
I don't know why.
Okay.
I think it's because I haven't spent as much time there.
You need to spend more time there, I guess.
Yeah. But Dallas, I think everyone from Fort Worth hates Dallas, and everyone from Dallas hates Fort Worth.
I don't think that's right. I don't think the people in Dallas hate Fort Worth.
True. You want me to do a poll? If I did a poll and I polled the people who live in Dallas currently and said, would you move to Fort Worth if I paid you money? They would say no. And a higher percentage of people who live in Fort Worth would say no to the inverse of that question.
Yeah, you won't have to pay out much money on people moving.
Would you? I'll give you $100,000 to move to Dallas.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Exactly. You wouldn't take it.
What do you like about Fort Worth? What's your favorite restaurant you go to?
My favorite restaurant?
Yeah.
Ooh, I love Righteous Foods.
What do you like about that?
I really like Del Frisco's downtown steakhouse.
Well, who doesn't?
It's very good, and I would say that that's definitely the best restaurant in town.
I would agree with that.
But Righteous Foods, they have like really healthy options. They have good organic food, and it's healthy food, but it's presented in a way that doesn't slap you in the face.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like, hey, try this.
You don't like it too healthy.
Yeah, like it's just very high quality ingredients. It's very good. They've got unique flavors and unique options. Cool environment. They have a lot of indoor plants, which is nice.
This episode of Decidedly sponsored by.
You asked the question. I don't know.
I didn't know you were going to go on a 5-minute promotion tour.
I'm hoping for a gift card, guys.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Well, I love Fort Worth, and I am really excited that we got to talk today to someone who loves Fort Worth, perhaps more than me, which is saying something. We got to talk to Mattie Parker. Mattie Parker was newly elected as the mayor of Fort Worth last June in 2021. She spent several years working as the chief of staff for the previous mayor, Betsy Price. She moved here 15 years ago with her husband and has been a part of the community and been a part of running our great city ever since then. As mayor, she's done a lot of great things, and I know that she will continue to do a lot of great things as she is the youngest mayor of any major American city and certainly my favorite mayor. I'm Sanger Smith with Sean Smith, and this is Decidedly.
When you look at your role and you role as mayor, what are you thinking will be the hardest decisions you're having to make?
When you're the fastest growing city in the country, that's an opportunity, but it's also a lot of risk, right? You have to be able to plan well into the future. And we're making decisions right now that I hope I'm not mayor to see them come to fruition, right? These are multi-year projects that require a lot of planning in place. And in areas like mobility and transportation and infrastructure, we need to make sure we continue on the right path to sustain the growth that we're experiencing. And so when it comes to hard decisions, what are the projects that deserve the most attention, that have the best ROI, especially when it comes to transportation infrastructure?
How do you define the ROI as mayor?
Well, I think for me, it's the where there's best partnership. So big transportation projects are a good example. It is not just the city that participates. It's TxDOT, North Central Texas Council of Governments, federal money, state money. And to me, the best investment of time I can spend is on those projects that will have the best partnership and mean the most for community. I'll give you a good example.
Okay.
Is East Lancaster corridor, and that community deserves more attention.
It
there's been a
needs
lot
some
of-
attention for
Yes,
sure.
and
Yeah.
there's been a lot of discussion for years about maybe bus rapid transit system, expanding that corridor into Arlington, which used to be it really was the highway to the west before I-30. And so the city of Fort Worth owes it to the community to think about a world-class infrastructure plan for Lancaster that is context sensitive for the community.
What do you mean context
Meaning
sensitive?
you're so surrounded by neighborhood and potential business economic development.
Gotcha.
So what enhances, rather than keeping people moving through, you want them to be a part of the community. And the best example, we were just joking about South Main, that project, that public infrastructure project on South Main has spurred a tremendous amount of private sector investment, right?
Yeah, that was really a barren area of the city.
Yeah, and so Lancaster's a good example of that. So those are hard tests. Right now we're facing redistricting, right? We're adding 2 seats to council, so we have to get that right on behalf of community. Everybody has an opinion. And so we're working through that, and we'll make some final decisions in March. And then as far as hard decisions, usually are those things that, to me, feel they most impact life and safety. Like those are the number one things. That's really what your responsibility of government really is. And I can't give you necessarily an example right now, but for making sure you have the right leaders in those, especially in first responder positions, like our chief of police, Neil Noakes, who's fantastic, and Chief Jim Davis, who runs our fire department. Those leadership positions to me are the most important.
See, that's an interesting answer. It's different. It's a different answer than what I was imagining, because as a financial advisor, I come to everything. You said ROI, and so my ears perked up. So I'm thinking an investment from the city. We want a good ROI. I'm thinking tax base. I'm thinking revenue from increasing, property tax, sales tax, all those types of things. So that's an interesting.
I think a lot of people approach decisions that way. Like, there are concrete thinkers, and there are people who are very numbers focused, and it gets really challenging to calculate the return on an investment of time or money when the results are going to be intangible.
And maybe for me, it's unique. Fort Worth is not a strong mayor city. We're a city manager form of government. So we rely on our city management team, and we have an excellent team, to bring us opportunities that they can give the stamp of approval on. This is a good investment for the city of Fort Worth. And the community side of it is our responsibility on council to understand the impact to our community members. And so the things that you articulated that absolutely get factored in, right? But the city of Fort Worth, we live within our means at the city, right? And we're going to make sure that.
And that's not true with every city.
No, it's
but,
not, or any government. And so we make sure we're making decisions that are best practice for living within our means within the city of Fort Worth and experiences high growth. And so I think any project we fund, or any program, or anything that comes out of our general fund or any other utility fund, we have to factor those things in also.
Well, you were talking about Fort Worth being the fastest growing city. I think maybe you told me this before, that there's somebody moving into Fort Worth every 26 seconds.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably right.
Yeah.
So Sanger has a contrarian opinion on this. He doesn't like that Fort Worth is growing because you have this desire to keep it small, and
I think that's not uncommon for people that have spent their life here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stood out to me when you were running, I remember coming into my office, and on the lobby that you walked right past when you came in, we had I think it was Fort Worth Inc. magazine that had a profile on you and each of the other candidates. I read the whole thing. And Cynthia, who was up at the front when you came in, she asked me, she goes, "Oh, who are you voting for?" I said, I'm about to decide. I didn't know anything. And yeah, I said, I'm going to figure it out right now.
Hal Brown will be excited
Yeah.
to hear the
That was genuinely how it went. You know, I had like Deborah Peoples, that was a name I had heard. Brian Bird, I had heard that name. I had not heard your name.
Yeah, Brian grew up right around the corner from us, so
Yeah.
you knew
Oh,
Brian.
see, that's great.
Yeah. So I noticed that there was a distinct difference in the profiles. There were several differences, but the distinct one was that you mentioned the culture of Fort Worth, and nobody else mentioned it. Every other candidate mentioned attracting businesses to Fort Worth, and maybe I misread, but you didn't mention that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that, you know, I didn't interpret anything by that other than that's pretty unique, that there's a difference. One person's focused on culture, nobody else is.
Right.
And I've noticed it in some of the things that you've talked about, but I'm curious how that factors in to the decisions that you make.
Well, that's a good question. I think for me, one thing that I want Fort Worth to get better at is be less reactive and more proactive. So when it comes to economic development specifically, and what I meant by the culture of Fort Worth, we are a really special community. And it doesn't take a rocket science to know it, but when you interview people that are new to Fort Worth, they've been here 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, they will tell you, I've lived all over the country, and this place is special. People are kind, they care, they invest in you. It's incredibly diverse economy, diverse constituency, and that's a positive for our city. But you can't take that for granted.
Yeah.
And if you are reactive, meaning you just take whatever's coming to you, growth wise, business wise, and you don't really you don't focus on the folks that are here and the talent in the community that's here and try to retain what makes us special, then we're just going to be anywhere USA.
Yeah.
And that certainly scares me in Fort Worth, because I think the reason people have wanted to live here, stay here, move here, grow the city, is they recognize that. But you can lose that if you're not careful.
Very easily.
Yeah. And I think for Fort Worth right now, we're a large city, over 350 square miles, which to your point about being too big, we're lucky that we are sprawled. So
Yeah.
you can have unique communities across our city and still feel small in your community.
That's true.
You can find your niche, which I think is great. But if you want to attract top talent and companies to our community, why doesn't it make more sense to be more proactive about, man, we want that company in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
They fit with the fabric of who we are, or that industry specifically, and be a little more selective, so to speak. And I think in a high growth city, you kind of have to consider that as well. And in Texas here, it's just such a competitive sport.
Yeah.
So, I want to make sure Fort Worth's a place where my boys are young right now. They're 5 and 11. And I want them to live here one day, right? I would love for them to grow up and they can travel the world and do all the fancy things and then maybe come back here and have roots. And I think if we're not careful, that we could lose that. And I definitely want us to be cognizant.
I think that's really encouraging for a lot of folks to hear, because and that's certainly how I feel is, I think I've been very fortunate to grow up and be a part of organizations that are very prideful, or communities are very prideful. Like, I went to A&M. Everybody jokes it's a big cult, right? Living in Texas, everyone's proud to be a Texan. The high school I went to, Heights, was like known in the city as being everyone was proud to go to Heights.
Yeah.
And there's something about each of and Fort Worth too. I've noticed that my whole life living here is that whether someone grew up on the north side, south side, east side, west side, they might have had very different lives. But the one thing that they love is Fort Worth.
Right.
Even though Fort Worth was different for each of those four people. And that's not what sometimes people are proud of their city. A lot of people are, but not with the level of
fervor, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think that probably had something to do, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, when we think back during all of the social protests that were going on some year and a half ago or so, it seems like although there were some in Fort Worth, it was not at the level that we saw in a lot of the other big cities. You say Fort Worth is one of the big cities. I think you even went to some of these protests, Sanger. And
I went
said
to
the tone was very different.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily protesting, but I was there I just wanted to talk to people.
Right. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have felt safe doing that in Dallas at all.
Yeah.
Or Chicago.
Well, and frankly special thanks to Ed Kraus, who was chief at the time in the police department, who made sure that we were allowing for peaceful protests. And